It is Friday night, 1995. Everyone thinks renting a movie for $4 at Blockbuster is a bargain. Then you realize this single chain pulled in more than $6 billion a year because of hidden charges and late fees built into every visit. To find the answer, let us follow an ordinary visit and uncover just how much money Blockbuster really made from us. Blockbuster's empire stretched across the country, with more than 9,000 stores worldwide at its peak, over 5,500 in the US alone. Each location averaged between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet, filling strip malls and shopping centers from big cities to small towns. Rent for a single store could run anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a month, not counting utilities and insurance. But every dollar spent on real estate was part of a calculated plan. Stores were positioned within 2 or 3 miles of at least 50,000 households, making sure no customer was more than a 10-minute drive away from their next movie night. Inside, the design was just as deliberate. New releases, always the hottest draw, lined the back wall, forcing every shopper to walk past rows of older titles and racks of candy and popcorn before reaching the main event. The entrance funneled customers by concession displays and checkout counters were loaded with impulse buys. This layout was not accidental. It was engineered to maximize every visit, turning a quick stop for a movie into a basket loaded with snacks, an extra rental, and maybe a late fee down the line. One former district manager said they wanted to be everywhere you looked. If you could see a Blockbuster sign from the grocery store parking lot, the company had already won. The sheer density of locations meant Blockbuster dominated the local video market, squeezing out smaller competitors and making itself the default stop for Friday night entertainment. Stocking a Blockbuster store in the early 1990s meant making big bets on every new release. Each VHS tape delivered from the studio cost between $65 and $85, a price that made every copy on the shelf a small investment. For a major title, stores often ordered 40 copies at once, putting $2,800 on the line for just one movie. To cover that cost, each tape needed to be rented at least 18 to 20 times before it started turning a profit. But the hits rarely stopped there. Popular movies could be checked out more than 100 times, multiplying returns and sending profit margins to 4 or even 5 times the original investment, as a Blockbuster finance executive from that era put it bluntly. We paid more for a tape than some customers spent in a month, but if it moved fast, the math worked. That bluntness captures the math behind the business. The math got even better in the late 1990s, when Blockbuster cut deals with studios to move from outright purchase to revenue sharing. Instead of paying $70 up front, Blockbuster paid as little as $3 to $8 per tape, then split 30 to 60% of rental revenue with the studio. With the risk of unsold inventory nearly erased, stores could flood their shelves with 3 to 5 times more copies of every hot title. The result was customers almost always found what they wanted, and Blockbuster's capital was freed up to stock even more movies, driving up both traffic and returns. The economics of inventory shifted from high risk, high reward to a volume game, powered by a new kind of partnership between Blockbuster and Hollywood. On a typical Friday night, Blockbuster's front lines sprang to life. 10 to 15 part-time employees, most of them teenagers or college students, rotated through shifts behind the counter and on the floor. Peak hours meant at least 4 workers running registers, scanning barcodes, and restocking shelves, as a steady stream of customers lined up with armfuls of tapes. Busiest locations could process 500 to 1,000 rentals in a single evening, and each transaction moved quickly thanks to computerized checkout. The hum of printers and the beep of scanners never really stopped. Every rental required a Blockbuster membership card. Signing up meant handing over your name, address, phone number, and date of birth. Information entered into a centralized system that tracked every tape you checked out, every due date, and every fee. For many customers, a credit card number was added to the file, allowing late fees to be charged automatically. In cash, heavy neighborhoods, or for new customers, a small deposit, usually $3 to $5 per rental, stood in for plastic, and it was refundable when the tape came back on time. Rental terms were crystal clear at checkout. New releases went out for 2 nights, catalog titles for 5. Return times were not suggestions. They were enforced by the system and by staff. If you missed the deadline, the account flagged you instantly. Employees were trained to remind customers of due dates and to warn about possible fees, but the real muscle came from the membership database. Accounts with unpaid balances were suspended and future rentals were blocked until everything was settled. As one store manager recalled, the rules were the rules. If your name was on the overdue list, you weren't getting another movie until you paid up. This blend of human labor and data-driven enforcement kept the rental machine moving, and it set the stage for what happened when those due dates slipped by. At the heart of Blockbuster's business was a penalty system that quietly reshaped the cost of movie night for millions. That penalty system was simple on paper. Each rental came with a daily late fee, typically $1.50 to $2 for new releases, and $1 to $1.50 for older titles. The rule was clear: return the tape by the deadline, or pay for every day it was late. But the reality was far more lucrative than most customers realized. Industry analysts estimate that 30 to 40% of all rentals racked up at least one day of late fees. For a family juggling school, work, and errands, missing a weekday 6 p.m. return time was almost inevitable. Even a single day's delay could double the price of a rental, turning a $4 movie into a $6 or $8 bill at checkout. The system was automated. Blockbuster computers tracked every rental and started the clock the moment a movie was overdue. There were no reminder calls and no grace period at most locations, and certainly no leniency for forgetful regulars. For those who let a tape sit for days, fees would pile up, sometimes reaching the full retail price of the movie, which could be $20 or more. Staff had some discretion to waive charges for polite regulars, but most customers paid up. One analyst put it this way: Blockbuster was monetizing human forgetfulness at scale. The numbers back it up. These small daily penalties added a hidden layer of profit to every store, quietly fueling the company's bottom line far beyond the sticker price of a Friday night rental. Blockbuster's business model depended on a delicate balance between steady rental income and a web of small charges that seemed harmless in isolation. A single store could bring in between $1 million and $1.5 million a year, with the bulk coming from the predictable churn of rentals. But the real engine was hidden in the margins, late fees, rewinding charges, lost tape penalties, and the impulse snacks stacked at checkout. At scale, these little extras added up fast. By 2004, company-wide revenue topped $6.1 billion, an empire built on millions of tiny transactions. For years, this formula worked. The late fees system alone generated around $800 million annually, propping up profit margins and covering the high costs of rent, staffing, and inventory. On paper, it looked bulletproof, but the reliance on penalty revenue was deeper than most realized. When Blockbuster tried to eliminate late fees in 2005, the impact was immediate and severe. Annual revenue dropped by $400 to $500 million almost overnight. Stores that once ran comfortably in the black were suddenly struggling to cover their fixed costs. Industry analysts saw the danger before it hit the headlines. Blockbuster's dependence on these microcharges left it exposed to disruption from new players like Netflix, who promised unlimited rentals for a flat monthly fee and no penalties for tardy returns. The economics that had fueled Blockbuster's rise, charging for every slip-up, became a liability in a world where customers expected convenience without the threat of punishment. The company's collapse was not just a story about changing technology, but about the risks of building a business on habits that customers would eventually outgrow. Blockbuster made money by being everywhere, by stocking everything, and by monetizing forgetfulness at scale. That model worked for a long time, but it left the business fragile when customers found a better, simpler alternative. Today, streaming platforms chase our attention without late fees, but the economics of convenience remain. Every new model finds its own way to monetize our habits. The real cost of entertainment is not just what we pay, it is how easily we forget who profits most when we stop paying attention.